Welcome to another week of engineering design in Omniverse. We're live and I found that it's nice to get started and then just hang out for a few minutes to let people roll in. So as people arrive, please leave me a message to let me know you're here. Yeah. Let me see. What should I show off while we wait? I think I'll show this off. And I'll show it again later in the live stream. But this is what I've got right here. These little Wi-Fi antennas are still loose, but I've got myself. This is the base plate or the mounting plate for all the hardware, and I've got my my multiplexer and my servo controller and my Jetson all mounted. I've got a power cable for the Jetson. One thing I learned, there are a few differences between the Jetson Nano and the Orin Jetson Nano, and so I'll talk about those a little bit today and make sure we've got those covered. They're not bad. They're actually just a few. Kind of go over how I use the Orin on here. Yeah, drop us a message if you're here. Jen will be joining us today any minute. Yeah, I'm not sure when she'll arrive, but soon. So if you're new, welcome to Engineering Design in Omniverse. If you're new to this project, what we're doing is I have this remote control car, a Tayima TT02, and we're modifying it. So I've got these standoffs mounted already. And now we've got this guy right here that we're going to be putting on. I just realized that there's this engine bracket thingamajigger that's not going. That's a technical term, by the way, thingamajigger. Jen has joined us.
I ran.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to take this little plate off. That's an easy one. Just don't know where my screwdriver is. I've been actually kind of organizing my stuff because I've been building this, and so my desk is a mess. But apparently, I'm not organizing it that well yet or I've organized it too well, and now I can't find my screwdriver. But that's okay. We'll do that later. Yeah. So, here we go. We got Raynon, or Papa Chuck, joining us, and welcome. And 3D motion blur. Yeah, so here's the RC car. I've got these standoffs installed. To do that, I had to drill some holes in the bottom of the chassis. And yeah. So we've got the real one here. And we've got the electronics right here. And I think now is a good time to go over the differences and the changes I had to make to get it to work. But really, the main difference. So let me grab my part here. The Orin Nano comes with this really nice plastic kind of frame on it. And that plastic frame uses the mounting holes for this bracket. And so you got to remove that. And then there are these two things here that are new. These two that weren't on the original Orin. And it turns out that the Orin Nano, they didn't come on the first Jetson. And the Orin Nano comes with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi already. And these are antennas. And so if you look at the bill of materials for this build, you won't need to buy the Bluetooth / Wi-Fi module or the antennas. I'm going to return those. Don't need them. And so you remove this plastic, You don't need the antennas. And then the only other difference is that the power, the original Jetson Nano had a 5.5 outer diameter by 2.1 millimeter inner diameter barrel plug. The Orin Nano has a 5.5 millimeter outside diameter by 2.5 millimeter inside diameter. And unfortunately, I had this with that smaller size. They have these really nice USB power cables that have a 90-degree on the USB, and they have a 90-degree on the barrel connector, and they're like 3 inches long, or 6 inches long, so they're perfect. I could only get these 80 centimeter long ones with straight connectors, at least where I was looking. I looked a fair amount, but it's not the end of the world. We're going to have this little bundle of wires hanging off. So there you go. Those are the differences. Zia's question is, so did you need to buy new connectors? Yeah, this power. This is just a USB to power barrel connector, and you've got to get the right size. And it's 5.5 millimeter by 2.5 millimeter. And if you forget, it's not that hard to check. Excuse me. Well, it says on the Orin specifications. You can also, and if you're not sure what you've got, because they're not labeled or anything, just grab yourself. I've got some calipers here. And you can just use your calipers to measure what you've got. Realizing that there's only so many sizes. So, and okay, so 3D Motion Blur says, what is the plan for this? And our plan is to build a pipeline that crosses the sim to real gap with robots. Okay. And so essentially, I want to build a pipeline so that any of you who want to build a business around robots can design your robot in CAD, can import it into Omniverse. You can then train it to do stuff in Omniverse at a low cost and at a high speed. Then you can manufacture your robot and deploy it at a customer's site to perform some industrial task. That's the pipeline. Great question. And so, yeah, we're building out that pipeline. And we're going to talk about where we're at that pipeline at the moment in each of the phases. Okay. And by the way, we want to make that pipeline as easy as possible. And so I've been working with the Isaac Sim team, and what we want to do is create kind of templates, if you will, for Isaac Sim, so that, for example, this is an Ackerman robot. It has an Ackerman because it has this kind of, a rack and pinion type of steering, right? A differential robot is one where it's just got the two rear wheels that can go either way. There's these different kinds of ways that robots move, and different kind of sets of controls and motors they have. And so we want to create kind of templates for you so that you can, if you have a robot that you want to build, you can say, well, it's going to have this kind of ability to move, this kind of mobility, and it's going to have this kind of grabber or controls on it. And so you should be able to grab a template and base your robot off of our templates to help accelerate you. That's the idea. But in the first one we're doing is this Ackerman robot because it's an accessible price point and because it's really fun, right? Why not? Great place to start. Okay, a few questions rolling in. How much power does the Orin require? And then also, so we can power it from the bench and from onboard the vehicle. Yeah. So when you buy the Orin developer kit, it comes with this power supply right here. So this is our bench power so that we can deploy, debug, get started. And then if you look at the JetRacer bill of materials, and we'll see how this one works, but it has you buy like a little one of these cell phone charge up batteries. And the one I got is kind of big. I think you could go smaller. But to use this, you also need this kind of it's like a USB to barrel connector, right? So yes, just like Zia is saying, is we can just hook it up to the bench and power it, or we can have mobile power with a battery. And there we go. Raynon knows Orin requires 2 hamsters of power. There we go. That's a two hamster power device. Thank you, Papa Chuck, for the useful answer. And here we go. So that's where we're at. I'm only short, so I've ordered the servo cables so that I can connect from all these controllers to the actual car. So I'm short the servo controllers. And one more difference. I almost forgot. Where's that? I almost forgot. So this camera, I got this camera, and most of these cameras, like the Arduino cameras you buy, they come with this ribbon connector. Right here. This is a 15-pin ribbon connector. The Orin uses a 22-pin ribbon connector. And so you need to buy this little adapter that goes from 15-pin to 22-pin ribbon connectors. And so my last 2 parts, those servo cables and my connector adapter, my camera adapter, should arrive today. So I should be able to show you a fully assembled Jetson JetRacer in next week's stream. So can't wait. Oh, and I just dropped my camera.
Ooh.
Oh dear.
Is it as good as dropping a Nokia?
Yeah, I think it'll be okay. Luckily, it landed bracket side down. Oh, great question from Zia. What kind of servos are on board? Actually, they're not even all servos. That's Jen's been doing this really helpful thing. Here we go. You've got just this. I'm all backwards. Here's the steering servo. I got a work mirror image. Here's the steering servo, and then you've got just the drive controller for the motor. That's it. Simple. And yes, the camera came with a protective lens, so it should be okay. Should have survived the drop. Yeah, so this is really a simple. I think that's also another reason we picked this as a starting robot, is because it's very simple, right? I just wanted a simple example, and I've even thought of an industrial use case that you all could sell with this robot. You guys, we want to hear it? So, no. Okay. No. Okay. We'll just move on. We'll forget it. No, this is my idea. Is if you put a LiDAR sensor on this thing, and if we taught it to drive around between taped lines, which is what we're doing, and to avoid some basic obstacle avoidance, then you could just have this thing drive around people's manufacturing facility and just capture reality once a day. Just kind of do a LiDAR scan of the shop, convert and work with a partner like Preview 3D to process that scan daily and kind of track the state of a shop every day. Detect if things are out of place, that sort of thing. And so you could create a robot that does an automated reality capture once a day with this remote control car, right? You could totally do it.
So I think this is like super important because if you think about it, if you have like a bunch of robots, like let's say in like a warehouse, right? Then you can use the scans from each one of those robots to help update your scene. So it doesn't
Oh
have
yeah,
to be
huh?
just one, right?
That's
So if you
cool.
implement it on one, then you can implement it on all of them. So in that way, like if your warehouse is super large and you have like 100 robots, you're able to scan the entire warehouse super quick, super fast. And then you could take that light eye scan, you could put it in Omniverse. Maybe you could start having them count inventory, so you can inventory all your stuff, right?
Yeah. And Papa Chuck is saying people already do that with remote control cars. And I don't know if they have those cars automated. And I think, and if they do, I don't know how they're training them or setting them up. But I think we can do it. I mean, if you think about it, for less than $1,000, and you all could really automate this process. So you could probably come up with some kind of a price point of like, for $2,000, I will deliver a robot to your facility that's pre-trained and ready to go to drive around once a day and do a reality capture,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can come up with a flat rate price, which, by the way, it's a lot easier to sell flat rate than hourly rate.
Yeah. Or you can help improve the Roombas out there in the world.
There you go. And then, so a couple of questions rolling in. This is really a fun idea. But first, this is how do we transmit the data? It has a Wi-Fi and a Bluetooth built into it. So I'd probably go with Wi-Fi. And then we've got an idea from Erebus to use ChatGPT to allow cars to talk. I think that's a really fun idea. And let's see. Yeah. So that's kind of the vision, right? Is we want to start to build these robot templates that you could then, you can take the JetRacer and say, well, I want to use that platform, but I want to add a LiDAR sensor to it, and then build out an industrial use case, or I don't know what, and so that's the vision. And so there's a lot of pieces to this pipeline of crossing that sim to real gap. Okay. And it starts with CAD. And right now, let me just bring that up. Let's just start with the beginning of the pipeline. Okay. Right now we're using Onshape as our CAD system. The reason we're using Onshape is because it has a pretty friendly free tier for you all to use. We get logged in here. Okay, here we have Onshape, and here we have the JetRacer. Great. So here's our basic, and we're developing this CAD model in such a way, in such a structure, that you'll see that this is kind of a cartoony version right now. But we're developing this pipeline so that as you update components, they'll fit into the pipeline. And the things we like about Onshape, one is that it's got a friendly free tier. Two is that there's already a really nice Onshape importer to Omniverse. And I've been talking to the Isaac Sim folks, and their latest version, it's not quite out yet, but I'm free to share this, supports spherical joints. And we had a bug I showed you the other day, or we were having trouble. I couldn't see my assembly. That bug is fixed. So that means that we can go ahead and rig up all of our joints, and we can do revolute, spherical, and prismatic joints at least. There might be other types that it supports, but that's all we need. So we can go ahead and model those right here in Onshape and for our design, and then we can import that directly into Omniverse. And so I'm going to rework the pipeline a bit to take that into account, because that's really going to be a time saver. I think it's easier to rig joints here in CAD than it is in Omniverse. Yeah. So we start with this. We're going to design a robot. We'll bring it import it into Omniverse. And then we have to rig it up with physics. The Onshape importer makes that pretty easy. And then we get it driving around. And that's where we're at with this. Let me grab my gamepad controller. And I'm going to redo this pipeline so that it uses the Onshape importer. But, by the way, this is my USB stick with a micro SD card that's going to have, that's for the Jetson. So I have that here. I'll deploy to that. Okay. So we've got a car with physics rigged up. Let's connect it. Connect. Run the simulation. Here we go. So I can drive this car right now with an Xbox controller or any gamepad controller. Oh dear. Well,
You just crash it.
I think it might have. Yeah.
Oh.
So we've got some stuff to work out with the physics. We'll see if it can recover or not. Probably not. So we've got to figure out. So we've got some work to do there on the physics to get the solver working stably. Yeah. So we've got the car imported into this virtual environment. We've got joint drivers on there. And so now what we can do with Isaac Sim is we can get this car driving around. And we can train it here inside of Isaac Sim. Now there's a decision that we've made that you may not be aware of right here. There are two ways that we can rig up this car. Okay? One way is there's this out-of-the-box physics vehicle template we can use. And it just kind of, it's nice because you can set it handles for Ackerman vehicles, it handles them really pretty well. And it's an approximation, but it works pretty well. It's what you've used in a lot of video games that gives a realistic feel to cars. It does do some fudging to make everything work. But it would be pretty easy to set up, and it would be very stable, right? We just had this crash, but it would be very stable with a solver to use this physics vehicle template. The downsides, one is because it would only work for Ackerman vehicles, whatever pipeline we develop for that might not translate into other types of, mobility types. That's not ideal. Or other robot types. And eventually, as the physics progresses, I think that just rigging it up from scratch is going to be more accurate. I think it's another good thing of doing it from scratch. And then the other good thing from doing it from scratch is we can, if we ever get so we can do high speeds, for example, we'll want to have the actual suspension geometry, not the simplified physics vehicle suspension geometry. So we've been moving it forward with rigging it from scratch, just because I think it's, in the short term, it's going to be harder, but in the long term, I think it's going to be better. So that's what we're doing right now. If you all hate that idea, I'm still kind of not completely set in stone, but I think that's the thought. And essentially the thought is to come up with an Ackerman robot Isaac template and flow and kind of workflow so that you can, if you have a different Ackerman robot, you can set it up. All right. So now where are we at? Just getting Isaac Sim launched and up and running again real quick. So we have this pipeline. We've got CAD to Isaac. Oh, and by the way, once we have good CAD, we can manufacture whatever robot you've designed. In this case, we're starting off with a kit. So our CAD doesn't need to be used for manufacturing. We really just need that bill of materials. But for those of you making a business out of this, you really might want, you're going to have to do your CAD such that you can manufacture whatever you want to actually manufacture, right? Here we go. Yeah, and Zia says, owning the rig flow allows for more learning and greater scalability. Yeah, that's right. That's the thought. Because I think that there are all these different types of robots. We're going to want to build templates for a number of them, right? Like I know Zia's interested in, I think, drones. And using the physics vehicle template is not going to help us at all. It's not going to help Zia at all with his drone work. But rigging this up from scratch, I think, would give you some knowledge that would translate over to the drone space. Okay. So we've got this. So now what we'll do is I'm going to work with the Isaac Sim team, and we're going to train. Let me just, sorry, there's so many pieces to this. I've been really trying to put it all together. We've got our Jetson Nano right here, the real one, right? And we want to basically run whatever is going to be on this. We want to emulate, if you will, in Omniverse. So it runs the same. And the way we're going to do that is with containers. So what you can do, and this is, I haven't done this yet, so we're learning how to do this, okay? Don't be too hard on me if this changes in a week or two. But you can create a Docker container. And if you're not familiar with containers, a container is basically, well, let's start with a virtual machine, right? A virtual machine is you set up an entire Linux or Windows machine that's running as a subsystem on your computer. A container is like that, but even more pared down. So you just say, this is the RAM, these are the absolute resources I need for this container. You set those aside, and it's really, instead of just setting aside a whole kind of virtual computer, you're setting aside just the resources you need. And so we can create a container that only has resources available on this Jetson device or whatever Jetson device you have. We build out that container, and then we'll write an extension that calls that container and uses it from within Omniverse in our desktop environment. And then we can deploy that container directly to our Jetson. And in theory, since we're kind of sandboxing the resources and everything, it should be just a direct transfer. And whatever, as long as we make the right assumptions with our physics and our modeling, we should be able to do a direct transfer of that container from the desktop environment to the physical real world, and our robot should work in the real world. And so so that's kind of, I think the next big step is I want to get a containerized Jetson working on my desktop computer, and then get that to make this virtual Omniverse car do something. I don't care if it just goes forward 10 centimeters and then goes backwards 10 centimeters. That works for me. And then I want to deploy that container to my real world JetRacer and have it do that. Just go like forward and back, or yeah. ZS mentions, great point. Turn the wheels is a good test. Yeah, I love it. We're just going to get the wheels to say hello or something, right? We're doing the hello world of this pipeline, right? We've got the hello world CAD. It's really basic. We've got the hello world physics. It's far from perfect. And the next step is the hello world Jetson container that just says hello world with the wheels, right? Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I love it. Zia is saying that this is the hello world of sim to real. That's exactly what it is. And then once we have this kind of this vertical slice, like we've connected every piece of the pipeline, we're going to loop back and say, okay, Now we want this robot to do something. Which piece of this pipeline needs to be improved upon, built out, so that we can actually want to go? I think the hello world is the place to start, but we want to go beyond that too. It does something. I think we wanted to drive around this track. That's the goal. But I think there might be an intermediate step of this, like just object avoidance. So we just have the car drive forward until it sees something, then turn backwards and go 90 degrees, and then drive forward until it sees something, and just kind of drive around avoiding objects, kind of a thing. It's kind of a classic. I think it's a classic sample. And oh, I love this question from Wisdom. I said your name right. If someone wants to start with Isaacson from scratch, how long in months will it take to advance? I think it depends. How far do you want to advance, right? That's where I'm at. I'm just getting started. So I guess if you're curious how long it takes, keep following along, because that's what we're doing. We're beginners here, but I have access to internal resources that can help me kind of move faster than someone outside might be able to. And I'm lucky enough to get paid to work on this, which is really cool. Like a kid in the candy store here. Yeah, so that's where we're at. What are people's thoughts? Talk to me here. How do you feel about this? Do you all like this direction? Is there something you would change about how we're headed? Or does it seem like this is the good way to go? Or, I might be curious. I think what I'd be curious is, what other kinds of robots would you be interested in? Because we're doing this Ackerman robot it's got an RGB camera in the front, just basic. I'm curious what other types of robots you would be interested in, and I'd be interested. I just wanted to, what are you all working on? Yeah, great comment from Papa Chuck. This is the state of the art. There is no clear path. Yeah, we're forging the path here, right? Although, I gotta show this really cool thing. Let me see if I can find it again. No, I gotta find it. There's this really cool group called Project Orbit. They're doing all this really cool robotics, like this robotics framework. And they're crossing there are researchers crossing the sim to real gap all the time. I can't find it right now, but yeah, so there's really cool stuff. Like they're getting, quadrupeds to walk and using Isaac, and they're getting like hand manipulation. They're getting like robotic hands that can have a cube with 6 sides, and you can say which side you want up, and it'll like use its fingers to move the cube around. It's really cool. Oh, this is really an interesting use case. Camera motion control for virtual production. Yeah, wouldn't that be cool if you could have a robotic camera that would automatically track actors or objects? Yeah, using AI. I think that'd be awesome. All right, so I think the next step is, should we try to get these physics figured out a little bit better? I think it's crashing quite a bit. And let's see if we can improve that a little bit. Yeah. I'm going to change cameras to my perspective camera.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how your joints right now and all of your springs are not like colliding with each other.
Oh, yeah, great question, Jen.
Because like I'm looking at all of them and I'm like,
They should be colliding with each other.
they look like they would be, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. All right, so for that, the trick is to physics scene. There's this thing called a collision group right here.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's long. It's not as bad as you're thinking though. Don't worry. What a collision group does is you just add a bunch of rigid bodies, or is it the collider itself? Let me see. Oh yeah, the collider meshes. So for a collision group, you add a whole bunch of collider meshes to it. You add a bunch of collider meshes to it, and then what you do is you can pick two different collision groups, and you can say you don't collide with each other, and those collisions will be ignored. Or in this case, what I've done is I've created a group of all of my rigid bodies in the car, and I've filtered it against itself and said, you don't collide with each other. And so all contacts between the car parts are ignored. Yeah. And that's done with a collision group.
And then should you put everything in like one collision group, or is there a benefit to have like multiple different kinds of collision groups? Like instead of like having them all in one, you like break it out in like separate ones.
Yeah, so you could do a whole bunch of stuff. So one problem with collisions is they're expensive. If you have a whole ton of objects in your scene that are colliding with each other, that can be, it's got to check everything against everything, and it's an expensive calculation to kind of check everything against everything, right? So one thing you can do is if you had different regions of your scene with stuff in different regions, you could put stuff that should collide with each other into a group, into these different categories, and then you could pick the other groups and say, don't even check those, because you should be nowhere near that other stuff. And so you could use it to improve. If you want to make a bigger scene with lots of collisions, you could use it there. You can also use it in this case to stabilize your mechanism, where you have joints that are colliding and are attached with joints. I'm using these collision groups to say, just don't worry about it. Yeah. So there's really a lot of, if you think about it, it's just a way of like, there's includes and excludes and all kinds of rules you can set. So you can do a lot with collision groups to either stabilize or reduce computational cost in your scene. Let's see. Well, Zia says, good question. Can we make these steps more accessible? Yeah, what we'll do is with this Ackerman car is we're going to have a template that already has those collision groups made. And so if you start with the template, then you don't have to create the joints or the collision filters. You should be able to we should be able to make it so that if you design an Ackerman car with a given assembly structure and you import it into Omniverse, and then you import this sublayer that we'll have that adds the collision group, adds the joints stuff, that sort of thing. You can just import that sublayer, and if your USD paths are the same because you've structured your assembly correctly, it'll do all that for you like a macro. It's really cool the way these sublayers can work. So with this pipeline, we're in this template, we're essentially trying to give you, part of what we're doing is giving you that structure that if I build to this structure, then I can use these sublayers that they've developed, that are already developed by either us or by you in the community, that will automatically rig up your robots for you, right? Plus, we should be able to publish pre-done Jetson containers that if you grab our container and our container extension, you should be able to use all that. So that's how we're trying to make it easier. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. But for adapting to a different type of drone, we'll need to mod the template or build it from scratch. Exactly right. Yeah. And that depends. Like here we have an Ackerman car with an RGB camera. So if you do a drone with an RGB camera, I might take this and rework it and use the RGB camera stuff, or at least copy and paste that. If you're doing an Ackerman car with a LiDAR scanner, then yeah, take it and adapt it. Absolutely. And one thing that we're working on is to be clear, Onshape's license agreement right now for the free license says no commercial use. So I'm digging into that a little bit, and so we'll see, and I'll for sure wherever I host these CAD files, in the end, I will make sure that it is somewhere that you can download them and use them for commercial use, be completely in the clear without paying any license fees. That's a requirement I've set for this engineering data. Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's important for these templates. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, let's go through this physics rigging and let's see if we can make it a little bit more stable, identify some problems. I'm not, there's something up here, right? It's crashing on me. And so let's see if we can find out. I'm going to bring up the console. First, I'll show you how it's all rigged. You saw that physics group. Here's the physics scene, which has gravity. And if you look, it's 980. That tells us that we're working in centimeters. We're using the TGS solver. We can play with this. I don't know much about the different solvers are, better or worse, or have different advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, so there's all these settings with our physics scene. And then I've got this physics default material. And because I have this collision group, the only thing that's colliding with anything else, the ground plane is not in that group. So the ground plane can collide with anything in the car, but it really should only ever be the tires, right? I guess I didn't think of that. If we just hit run, how low does it sit? Yeah, that's looking good. What's this? Joint friction attribute is only applied for joints in articulations. Oh. You know what I want to do real quick? Sometimes what you get is if I don't have proper joint frictions, we'll see stuff spinning and that sort of thing. So, sorry. Let's go back through the rigging. I got squirreled a little bit. So here we go. Our physics material. I've just set friction. Oh, and I don't have restitution set. Let's set restitution to 0.5. What is it? If it was 0, interesting. Okay, that part's the same. Let's connect it. I want to save this because I made that change that I want to keep. Just looking for something that's not set. That's a weird default value. Restitution of 0 is a little goofy. Ooh. Let's change to our camera. Oh, we just crashed it again. Let's see if we can get. Oh, here we go. Oh. Exceeding maximum number of physics errors. Oh.
Oh.
Killed it again. All right, so we've changed the restitution.
So is this what happens when you have too much physics going on in your scene? It just can't handle it?
No, it's usually more like, let's say I have one thing that's has a mass of 1/1000th of a gram and another thing that's got a mass of 1,000,000 grams or 1,000,000 kilograms in the same scene, and they hit each other. Well, how fast is that 1/1,000,000th of a gram thing going to bounce off? Too fast, right? It's going to end up with some really high velocity that just breaks everything. So
I see. So we can't do like light speed
no.
type of things. Okay.
Yeah, so if I've got some weird masses in there, if there's something with no friction, and some like there could be one of those cylindrical tie rods, for example, if it has zero friction in the joints, it could be starting to spin, and it could accelerate infinitely because in the SolveWorks is like, whoa, this thing is moving fast, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's probably something like that. So I'm just going to, I think the next thing, I'll show you some more of the rigging, and I won't do any more test runs until I've shown you a bit more of that. And Zia has a good point. It could have to do with the shape of the tires. So the shape of the tires, which is because they're kind of meshed, that's why they're bouncing a little bit, is because they're not perfectly round. And Zia is saying that maybe a simple cylinder would work better. And I've actually changed them to spheres. And we can try that. We can change the tires to spheres, bounding spheres. Problem I had is then it wouldn't turn. It was like it was going on ice. It was like the friction wasn't working right.
Yeah, right. Because that's if it's a ball, right, like a sphere, like it's not going to be able to turn. It's only able to go in one direction.
Yeah, but let me just wrong folder. JetRacer simulation. That restitution is fixed for the tires now, which I think should be good. And there's all these little handles and details with this thing. I've got it just rigged overall, but I've got to go through the whole thing with a fine-tooth comb and make sure I haven't done anything really silly, like have something with a mass of 0 or a friction of 0, or there's lots of little things you can mess up. And these warnings, I don't know if you saw these. Let's clear this. If I run the simulation and stop it, it's saying joint friction attribute is only applied for joints and articulations. And that's on the tie rod, the left tie rod for one of the left tie rod joints. And so if it's ignoring friction on that tie rod, and if that which is a cylinder, so it could be spinning and we wouldn't see it. Let's see here. But let's take a look at some stuff here. There's a way. That's all right. Let's go to window. Oh, how it's rigged first. So here's my JetRacer. And what I've done is each of these, why isn't it highlighting? Selection color. I don't know why not. But basically each part that moves relative to another part is got its upper level group here. Okay, so the upper arm moves as like one rigid body, and that could be an assembly of parts. Like there's going to be spherical bearings in there and that sort of thing. Or if you look at the wheel, there's like the rim and there's a number of parts that are bolted together, but those are all grouped together as one rigid body. And then between those rigid bodies, I've got these joints set up. Here we go. Yeah, see, I've got all these joints set up. Oh, what did I do? There you go. All right. So you define those joints between the rigid bodies. And then to the joints that you want to actually control, you add a drive to those. So that's what we've done so far. But let's take a look at this. And if you have questions, please ask. If I go to simulation and then the debug, this debug window is really helpful. We can enable the simulation debug visualization. And we can look at collision shapes. So now if we run, we can see the collision shapes. And I'm going to also do the body mass axes. Here we go. And there is Gia asks if there's a fasten joint. There is a fasten joint. I do not care for it. It's giving me nothing but trouble. I think it's just easier to group things that should be fastened together into a single subassembly and make them one rigid body. It's a lighter weight calculation anyway, because if with a fasten joint, you've got rigid body 1, rigid body 2, you're keeping track of both of those, and you're done every step. They're moving apart from each other or something, and then you're bringing them back together, which is dicey. So, okay, let's see if we can do this without breaking it. Okay, check this out.
Oh,
Do you see those shocks moving? Why is that moving?
they're like rotating.
Yeah, it's because they got a ball joint on the ends and then a prismatic joint between them. Let's change cameras.
Is it like a delay in which you like move the vehicle and then like it kind of like comes to a slow stop?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking for something. Let's get some more of the debugs properties in there. What are those? Let me change to my perspective camera. I've got these collision axes over here. I haven't used those before. Just looking for, where is it? Oh, joint limits. I didn't even think of that. Oh, I turned something on. SDFs. Oh. Why are the bounding boxes on the wheels at different angles? Sorry. Ooh. Oh, that was wild. Okay. I think they just haven't all moved the exact same amount, which I would expect, because if I turn this wheel in reverse, some of them are going to move more than others. It doesn't look like they're slipping. One time I thought maybe they were slipping really bad, you know? Seems like the friction is pretty good. Let's change that camera and let's just, I don't know, let's just drive till it crashes, I guess, and see if we can see anything out of the ordinary. Oh, there was something else that I used before that was really helpful. Like you could see, Oh no, I know. If the body mass was all, it's in good shape right now. If the body mass was all weird, then that white bounding box would be like way off to the side or would be goofy. Let's see here. It's just like working now. Why? Why are you working now? I'm trying to
Because
debug.
you changed the masses.
There's that friction. Kind of getting jittery now.
So how comes the camera is kind of like it looks like we're going on a bumpy road?
Yeah, that's some of these contacts are a little rough, you know. That's what Zia was saying about the, our collision shapes are these SDF meshes, which have all these facets. So it's kind of bumpy.
Could you apply like a physics material to smooth it out?
Yeah, let's if I look at the physics material, restitution, compliant contact stiffness. Yeah, I've played with that some. It didn't seem to help. Let's make it really stiff. Because right now I think it's infinite stiffness. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay. That doesn't seem any better, right? Let's make it like 1 or 0.01. Make it tiny. It's not stiff at all. Seems about the same to me. Here, somebody mentioned let's filter by our colliders. Let's go to the tires. There's 1 tire, 2 tires, 3 tires, 4 tires. And let's take a look at these colliders. Yeah, Zia's saying, the chase cam is attached to the vehicle. So if the vehicle jitters, the camera jitters, which I actually, for now at least, want it that way. So our options here, we can do a triangle mesh, a convex decomposition, a convex hull, a bounding sphere, a bounding cube, or mesh simplification. I thought a bounding sphere would actually be pretty good. Let's see what it looks like. So there's your bounding sphere.
Doesn't seem right.
Yeah, let's see if we.
Can you do like
It just killed it.
Like a capsule instead?
No, those are your options for your bounding shape right now.
Mm.
And with from Zia's comment, with the spheres, it was definitely looking a lot worse, I would say. And if you look, I think there's got to be something else going on, because if you look at those SDF meshes, they're like really pretty smooth, you know?
Are we able to drive it over a rock?
I haven't tried that yet.
Because Zia would like to know how the suspension is.
Oh dear.
Next time.
We could try that. I don't know. What's it gonna do? Crash on me? No, I think we're out of time though, aren't we? I don't think I'm gonna we've got 2 minutes left, and Isaac's not gonna be, I don't know. I can barely open it, I bet. So I think that's probably, I really want to dig into that container, and I'll for the for the Jetson, and I think I will dig into that this week. But I'll also be digging into this physics, trying to get this stabilized a bit, figure out what I'm doing wrong, because it's it's crashing, right? We're getting some stuff that something's moving really fast, or that sort of thing. Could you replace the bumping meshes for the wheels with cylinders with the Create UI? So they are pretty smooth shapes. The problem is that you could create a cylinder in Create, but I don't think that you still need a contact mesh, and there's not a cylinder option for your contact mesh itself. And maybe that's the answer. So that's interesting. Michael's saying that he believes physics supports cylinders. If that's the case, it might be that it's only the Omniverse UI that's not letting us create a cylinder, and we might be able to go ahead and create a cylinder with an extension or something. So I can definitely look into that. But my guess, that SDF mesh they've worked really well for me in the past. And my guess is there's something else going on. I just got to figure that out. So because I know it's bumping it around and stuff, but the joints aren't getting way out of whack from what I can see, and nothing is spinning. Those shocks are spinning a little bit, but I've added friction, so they stop fizzing, so they stop spinning. So something's up there. We got to figure it out. So it could be a lot of things, and we'll get it nailed down though. And I'll share what I find with you next week, and hopefully we can get the physics working really well, and hopefully by next week I've got that Jetson container working. I really want to show that off. I really want to do that, have that Hello World wheels turning thing working by next week. So until then, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Gen 2. Say bye, Jen. All right. See you guys later.